come in. Oh, it's you. I apologize you called me during my practice. Yes, I do play the violin. I feel it's much more sophisticated than the harp, as much as I do prefer my physical training to the arts. Oh, you liked it. Well, that's very kind. Perhaps one day you'll be fortunate enough to walk in on me practicing again. I assume you're here to prepare me for sleep. Wonderful. Yes, you can just set the tea tray on the nightstand. I will get changed. So, how are you doing in Castle Burmstone? You aren't too cramped in the servants' quarters, are you? That's good to hear. I try to make sure that all my servants feel appreciated and content. I find they work more efficiently when they know I will reward them for working hard. I'm sure you're all too familiar with my father's ideals. He says that fear is the only way to command, although you'll find we disagree on quite a few things. There, all dressed. What's wrong? You seem nervous. Oh, please. You don't have to worry. As long as you don't try and pull a mutiny or kill me, I won't do anything to you that would be threatening of your life. Have you ready the tea? Oh, please. Don't get so flustered now, you're going to drop the pot. It's alright, it's your first night doing this. What, did you expect me to be meaner? Oh, yes. I suppose you might have that expectation, seeing your only impression of me was around my father. I apologize. His presence doesn't put me in the best of moods. Oh, my tea. Thank you. Is my book ready in the lounge? Very good, boy. You're doing quite well on your first day. Come along, you may sit and relax. He could stand to brew another minute next time, but that's alright. You're learning. Your new clothes fit alright? That's good to hear. You look proper in them. I apologizing for making them a bit richer than the other servants, but if you are to be my personal servant, you have to be looking well. Enzo hasn't given you trouble, I hope? He's head servant around the castle. He's in charge of all of you. I hear muttering in the hall that the old man can be quite strict. Ah, very good. He means well, I promise. What am I reading? Oh, it's one of my favorite author's stories. I get them shipped from the vampiric lands every time he releases a new one. He writes primarily fiction. This one in particular is called The Tale of Despero. It's about this mouse who becomes a knight. Incredibly impractical, but I'm not sure. It interests me. Would you care to hear it? Of course. Chapter 1. The Last One. This story begins with the walls of a castle, with the birth of a small mouse. A small mouse, the last mouse born to his parents, and the only one in his litter to be born alive. "Where are my babies?" said the exhausted mother, when the ordeal was through. "Show to me my babies." The father mouse held up only one small mouse up high. "There is only this one," he said. "The others are dead." "Mon Dieu, just the one mouse, baby?" "Just the one. Will you name him?" "All that work for nothing," said the mother. She sighed. "It is so sad. It is such a disappointment." She was a French mouse who had arrived in the castle long ago in the luggage of a visiting French diplomat. Disappointment was one of her favorite words. She used it often. "Will you name him?" repeated the father. "Will I name him? Will I name him? Of course I will name him. But he will only die like the others. Oh, so sad. Such a tragedy." The mouse mother held a handkerchief to her nose and then waved it in front of her face. She sniffed. "I will name him. Yes, I will name this mouse Despero, for all the sadness, for the many despairs in this place. Now, where is my mirror?" The husband handed her a small shard of mirror. The mouse mother, whose name was Antoinette, looked at her reflection and gasped aloud. "Toulouse," she said to one of her sons, "get from me my makeup bag. My eyes are afraid." While Antoinette touched up her eye makeup, the mouse father put Despero down on a bed made of blanket scraps. The April sun, weak but determined, shone through the castle window, and from there squeezed itself through the small hole in the wall, and placed one golden finger on the little mouse. The other mouse children gathered around to stare at Despero. "His ears are too big," said his sister Malo. "Those are the biggest ears I've ever seen." "Look," said the brother named Furlough. "His eyes are open. Pa, his eyes are open. They shouldn't be open." It is true. Despero's eyes should not have been open, but they were. He was staring at the sun reflecting off his mother's mirror. The light was shining into the ceiling in an oval of brilliance, and he was smiling up at the sight. "There's something wrong with him," said the father. "Leave him alone." Despero's brothers and sisters stepped back, away from the new mouse. "This is the last," proclaimed Antoinette from her bed. "I will have no more mice babies. They are such a disappointment. They are hard on my beauty. They ruin, for me, my looks. This is the last one. No more." "The last one," said the father, "and he'll be dead soon. He can't live, not with his eyes open like that." But reader, he did live. This is his story. Chapter 2. Such a Disappointment. Despero Tilling lived, but his existence was cause for much speculation in the mouse community. "He's the smallest mouse I've ever seen," said his Aunt Florence. "It's ridiculous. No mouse has ever been this small, not even in Tilling." She looked at Despero through narrowed eyes as if she expected him to disappear entirely. "No mouse," she said again. "Ever." Despero, his tail wrapped around his feet, stared back at her. "Those are some big ears he's got too," observed Uncle Alfred. "They look more like donkey ears, if you've asked me." "They're obscenely large ears," said Aunt Florence. Despero wiggled his ears. His Aunt Florence gasped. "They say he was born with his eyes open," whispered Uncle Alfred. Despero stared hard at his uncle. "Impossible," said Aunt Florence. "No mouse, no matter how small or obscenely large-eared, is ever born with his eyes open. It simply isn't done." "His pa, Lester, says he's not well," said Uncle Alfred. Despero sneezed. He said nothing in his defense. How could he? Everything his aunt and uncle said were true. He was ridiculously small. His ears were obscenely large. He had been born with his eyes open. And he was sickly. He coughed and sneezed so often that he carried a handkerchief in one paw at all times. He ran temperatures, he fainted at loud noises, and, most alarming of all, he showed no interest in things a mouse should show interest in. He did not think constantly of food. He was not intent on tracking down every crumb. While his larger, older siblings ate, Despero stood with his head cocked to one side, holding very still. "Do you hear that sweet, sweet sound?" he said. "I hear the sound of cake crumbs falling off people's mouths and hitting the floor," said his brother Tousse. "That's what I hear." "No," said Despero. "It's something else. It sounds like, honey." "You might have big ears," said Tousse, "but they're not attached right to your brain. You don't hear honey, you smell honey. Well, there's honey to smell, which there isn't." "Son," barked Despero's father, "snap to it! Get your head out of the clouds and hunt for crumbs." "Please," said his mother, "look for the crumbs, eat them and make your mama happy. You're such a skinny mouse. You're such a disappointment to your mama." "Sorry," said Despero. He lowered his head and sniffed the castle floor. But Rita, he was not smelling. He was listening, with his big ears, to the sweet sound that no other mouse seemed to hear. Chapter 3. Once Upon a Time. Despero's siblings tried to educate him in the ways of being a mouse. His brother Furlough took him on a tour of the castle to demonstrate the art of scurrying. "Move side to side," instructed Furlough, scrabbling across the waxed castle floor. "Look over your shoulder at all the time. First to the right, then to the left. Don't stop for anything." But Despero wasn't listening to Furlough. He was staring at the light pouring in through the stained glass windows of the castle. He stood on his hind legs and held his handkerchief over his heart and stared up, up, up into the brilliant light. "Furlough," he said, "what is that thing? What are all these colours? Are we in heaven?" "Cripes!" shouted Furlough from a far corner. "Don't stand there in the middle of the floor talking about heaven. Move! You're a mouse, not a man. You've got to scurry." "What?" said Despero, still staring into the light. But Furlough was gone. He had, like a good mouse, disappeared into a hole in the moulding. Despero's sister Malo took him to the castle library, where light came streaming in through the tall, high windows and landed on the floor in bright yellow patches. "Here," said Malo, "follow me, small brother. I will instruct you on the fine points of how to nibble paper." Malo scurried up a chair, and from there hopped onto a table in which sat a huge open book. "This way, small brother," she said as she crawled onto the pages of the book. And Despero followed her from the chair to the table, to the page. "Now then," said Malo, "this glue here is tasty, and the paper edges are crunchy and yummy like so." She nibbled the edge of the page and then turned over at Despero. "You try," she said. "First, bite off some glue and then follow it with a crunch of the paper. And all these squiggles, they're very tasty." Despero looked down at the book, and something remarkable happened. The marks on the pages, the squiggles, as Malo referred to them, arranged themselves into shapes. The shapes arranged themselves into words, and the words spelled out a delicious and wonderful phrase. Once upon a time. "Once upon a time," whispered Despero. "What?" said Malo. "Nothing." "Eat," said Malo. "I couldn't possibly," said Despero, backing away from the book. "Why?" Said Despero, "it will ruin the story." "The story? What story?" Malo stared at him. A piece of paper trembled at the end of her one indigent whisker. "It's just like Pa said you were when you were born. Something is not right with you." She turned and scurried from the library to tell her parents about this latest disappointment. Despero waited until she was gone, and then he reached out and with one paw touched the lovely words, "Once upon a time." He shivered, he sneezed, he blew his nose into his handkerchief. "Once upon a time," he said aloud, relishing the sound. And then, tracing each word with his paw, he read the story of a beautiful princess and a brave knight who serves and honors her. Despero did not know it, but he would need very soon to be brave himself. Have I mentioned that beneath the castle there was a dungeon? In the dungeon there were large rats. Large rats. Mean rats. Despero was destined to meet those rats. Reader, you must know that an interesting fate, sometimes involving rats, sometimes not, awaits almost everyone, mouse or man, who does not conform. Well then, I suppose that's enough for tonight. I am getting tired now. Thank you, you've done very good. You may be off to bed as well, but remember, your duties also coincide with waking me up for my work. Very well. Rest well, dear boy. Don't stay up too late now.